Welcome back to the deep dive. I am so excited for today's topic. We are tackling data visualization.
Oh, this is going to be fun.
I think so.
Yeah.
So we're talking tables, charts, graphs.
Love them.
Even maps.
Oh, yes, maps.
You've sent us a bunch of research articles and videos, so
This will be good.
get ready to see data in a whole new light.
I'm ready.
You know those moments when you're faced with like a graph in a news article or a report and you're not quite sure what to make of it? Well, after this deep dive, you'll be able to decode those visuals and understand the stories that they're telling.
Yeah, people need that.
I think so.
That's so important.
Yeah, and maybe even spot some sneaky tricks along the way.
Oh, sneaky. I like that.
So what's fascinating about this collection of materials is that they cover the entire spectrum from the very basics to some pretty advanced concepts.
I was going to say, you guys really did your homework.
Yeah, we did.
It's like you gave us the ingredients to bake a data visualization masterclass.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so let's start with the fundamentals.
Well,
The Introduction to Professional Communications excerpt talks about tables being the workhorses of data presentation.
they really are. Like, if you need just that good, solid data laid out clearly, tables are the way to go.
So they're perfect for when you need precise numerical data, like side by side.
Yeah, imagine you're comparing different laser printers.
Okay.
A table can neatly present all those specs side by side. Price, print speed, resolution, paper capacity. It lets you compare and contrast easily.
So tables are all about those details.
Yeah.
But what if you want to see the bigger picture?
Right.
The trends hidden within those numbers.
That's when you bring in the charts and graphs, baby.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah.
Charts and graphs.
They trade some of that numerical precision for a more visual story.
Okay, so give me an example.
Okay, think about tracking sales figures over a year.
Mm-hmm.
A table would list the numbers month by month, right? But a line graph, boom. You instantly see whether sales are climbing, plateauing, or taking a nosedive.
So it's the difference between reading a recipe and watching a cooking show.
Ooh, yes.
Yeah, so the show brings the recipe to life and makes it more engaging and understandable.
Exactly. And just like there are different types of cooking shows, there are different types of charts and graphs, each suited to a particular purpose.
Okay.
Yeah, the Warner Jordan education video mentions a bunch of them. We've got line graphs for showing trends over time, bar charts for comparing distinct categories, and pie charts for visualizing proportions of a whole.
Okay, I am already feeling more confident
Okay.
deciphering those charts I see in the news.
You should.
But I have to admit, sometimes I get intimidated by those really complex graphs with multiple lines and bars and labels everywhere.
Oh, yeah. You see those and you're like, whoa, what is going on here? It's like, whoa.
Yeah, too much.
But don't worry. Even the most complex visualizations are built from these basic building blocks.
Okay, good.
So we're going to break down a few more types
Yeah.
so you can feel like a data visualization pro.
Perfect. I am ready to level up my data skills.
All right, imagine you're reading a research paper, and they're studying the relationship between, let's say, doctor ratings and patient ratings of acne improvement.
Okay.
They might use something called a scatter plot,
Okay.
where each dot represents a pair of ratings.
Mm-hmm.
So if you see like a tight cluster of dots along a diagonal line, that suggests that doctors and patients are pretty much in agreement.
So it gives you a visual sense
Yes, exactly.
of whether there is a connection between those two things.
Mm-hmm.
What about maps?
Oh, I love maps.
Those are visualizations too, right?
Absolutely. Maps are visual representations of data tied to location.
Okay.
I mean, think about election results. A map can instantly show you which candidate won which states with different colors representing different outcomes.
Okay.
Or a map could show obesity rates across the country, highlighting areas with higher or lower concentrations.
So maps bring the data to life on a geographic level?
They do.
That's powerful.
But here's where things get really interesting and potentially tricky.
Ooh.
We need to remember that just because data is presented visually doesn't mean it's objective or unbiased.
Okay.
In fact, charts and graphs can be incredibly misleading if you're not careful.
I'm sensing a data mystery here.
It's more like data detective work.
Okay.
Both the Warner Jordan education video and Thomas Field's video highlight some of the common ways visualizations can be manipulated to tell a particular story.
Okay, so how do we become savvy data detectives? What are the clues we should be looking for?
Well, first, always consider the source of the visualization.
Right.
Who created it
Yeah,
and
right.
why? What's their perspective
Okay.
or agenda? For example, a chart showing the effectiveness of a new drug might look very different depending on whether it's presented by the pharmaceutical company that developed it or by an independent research group.
Right, because everyone has a perspective,
Uh-huh.
and that perspective can influence how they present data.
Exactly.
So source is clue number one.
Yes.
What else should we be on the lookout for?
Time frame.
Okay.
Yeah, the story chart tells can change dramatically depending on the time frame it covers.
Okay.
Imagine a graph showing rising crime rates in a particular city.
Okay.
It might look alarming if you only look at the past year,
Right.
but if you zoom out to a 10-year time frame, you might see that the recent increase is actually part of a long-term downward trend.
That's a great point. It's all about context.
Yeah.
So we got source bias and time frame.
All right.
Anything else to add to our data detective toolkit?
Absolutely. Pay close attention to how the axes are labeled
Okay.
and scaled.
Yeah.
A truncated axis can make a small change look huge, while a distorted scale can hide important patterns.
Okay.
And always be on the lookout for misleading correlations.
Right.
Just because two things happen to change at the same time,
Yeah.
even in a seemingly related way, doesn't mean one caused the other.
This is reminding me of that hilarious example from Thomas Field's video where he shows a graph comparing the number of Nicolas Cage films released each year to the number of people who drowned by falling into a pool.
Oh, that's a classic.
They correlate amazingly well.
Yeah, but it's obviously absurd to think that Nicolas Cage's acting career is somehow causing people to drown.
Exactly. It's a perfect reminder that correlation does not equal causation.
It doesn't.
And I think you had another example comparing organic food sales to autism prevalence, making the same point.
Yeah, it's so easy to see a pattern and jump to a conclusion.
Right.
But there could be a third unmeasured variable at play, or it could just be pure coincidence.
Okay, so we got our data detective hats on.
I love it.
We're scrutinizing sources, checking time frames, and wary of those sneaky
This
correlations.
is good. You're getting it.
What's next on our data visualization journey?
Well, now that we've mastered the art of reading charts and graphs, let's explore how we can use data to go beyond simple descriptions and make predictions about the world around us.
Ooh, I love where this is going.
Yeah.
We're about to unlock the power of data to predict the future.
Well, maybe not the future,
Okay.
but we can definitely use data to make informed guesses about what might happen next.
My all ears, lead the way.
All right, let's go.
Ugh.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Last time we talked about how to read and interpret different types of visualizations like line graphs, bar charts, and maps. We even learned to become data detectives, scrutinizing sources and spotting sneaky tricks that can make data misleading.
Right. We learned that correlation doesn't equal causation. I think I'll forever picture Nicolas Cage making movies when I see a spurious correlation.
A memorable image for sure.
Mm.
But now, let's move beyond simply describing data and delve into the fascinating world of inferential statistics. It's all about using the data we have to make predictions and draw conclusions about larger groups.
So, kind of like how we use exit polls to predict the outcome of an election, we're taking information from a small group and using it to infer something about the whole population.
Exactly. And that's a great example. But to really understand how that works, we need to grasp the concept of sampling distributions, which can be a bit of a brain twister.
Okay, I'm ready for the challenge. Break it down for me.
Imagine you have a huge jar filled with marbles, and you want to know the average diameter of all the marbles, but you don't have time to measure every single one.
Yeah, that would take forever.
Right, so you take a random sample of, say, 50 marbles and calculate their average diameter. That's your sample statistic.
Okay, that makes sense. But how does that tell us about the whole jar?
Here's where it gets interesting. If you repeated this process, taking multiple random samples of 50 marbles and calculating the average diameter, each time you'd end up with a bunch of different averages.
Right, because each sample would be slightly different, so the averages would vary a bit.
Exactly. And if you plotted all those sample averages on a graph, you get what's called a sampling distribution. It shows you the range of possible sample averages and how frequently they occur. This distribution is key because it helps us understand how much our sample statistic might vary from the true population parameter, which in this case is the average diameter of all the marbles in the jar.
So the sampling distribution gives us a sense of how reliable our estimate is.
Precisely. It tells us how confident we can be that our sample average is a good representation of the true population average. The narrower the sampling distribution, the more confident we can be.
That's fascinating. It's like a window into the potential variability of our estimates. So we're using data from a sample to make inferences about a larger population. What other powerful tools do we have in our data arsenal?
Well, we've been focusing on quantitative data, the kind we can measure and count. But the qualitative study excerpt reminds us that there's a whole other world of data that can provide rich insights. It's the world of qualitative data, things like experiences, perceptions, and behaviors.
Right, so we're talking about things that can't be easily measured with numbers. How do we even begin to analyze that kind of data?
Qualitative research has its own set of approaches and techniques. Think about trying to understand the experiences of people living with a chronic illness. You could conduct interviews, asking them about their daily challenges, their emotional responses, their coping mechanisms.
So instead of crunching numbers, we're gathering stories and perspectives.
Exactly. And those stories can reveal patterns and themes that might not be apparent from quantitative data alone.
That makes sense. It's like the difference between reading a medical textbook about a disease and hearing firsthand from someone who's actually living with it.
Precisely. And just like with quantitative data, there are different approaches to qualitative research. The excerpt mentions a few, like ethnography and grounded theory. Ethnography is all about immersing yourself in a particular culture or social group to understand their way of life.
So kind of like an anthropologist studying a remote tribe.
Exactly. While grounded theory aims to develop a theory based on the data collected, often through interviews and observations, it's about letting the data guide the development of a theory, rather than starting with a preconceived notion.
It sounds like qualitative research is all about digging deeper, getting beneath the surface to understand the why behind the what.
It is. And it often involves analyzing large amounts of text data, transcripts of interviews, field notes, even social media posts. There are even software programs like ATLS.TI and NVivo that can help researchers manage and analyze all that qualitative data.
So we have tools for both quantitative and qualitative analysis. But how do we bring them together? Can they work together to give us a more complete understanding?
Absolutely. That's where things get really exciting. In the final part of this deep dive, we'll explore how these seemingly different approaches can actually complement and enrich each other, leading to truly powerful insights.
I can't wait to see how it all comes together. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground, from basic chart types to the complexities of inferential statistics and qualitative analysis. But here's the question that's probably on your mind. So what? How can you, dear listener, actually use all this data knowledge in your everyday life?
That's the key, isn't it? It's not just about understanding these concepts in the abstract. It's about how they empower you to navigate a world overflowing with data.
Exactly. Every day we're bombarded with charts, graphs, and statistics in the news, on social media, even in advertising. It can feel overwhelming.
It absolutely can. But remember those data detective skills we talked about. Now you can spot misleading graphs, question claims, and dig deeper to understand the context behind the numbers. You're no longer a passive consumer of information. You're an active participant, discerning fact from spin.
Right. I'm picturing our listeners out there armed with their data decoder rings, ready to take on the world. But let's get specific. What are some real-world scenarios where this knowledge comes in handy?
Think about your own job or field. Are there reports you need to analyze, presentations you need to give, or decisions you need to make based on data? Understanding the nuances of data visualization can help you communicate more effectively and make more informed choices.
That's a great point. It's not just about being a savvy consumer of information. It's about being a more effective communicator and decision maker.
Absolutely. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone presents a graph showing a dramatic increase in sales. But you, with your newfound data wisdom, notice that the axis is truncated, making a small increase look much larger. You can politely point this out, helping everyone have a more accurate understanding of the situation.
Right. You can be the data hero, saving the day from misleading visualizations. But it's not just about spotting tricks. It's also about using data to tell compelling stories and make persuasive arguments.
Exactly. Imagine you're trying to convince your company to invest in a new sustainability initiative. You could create a series of visualizations that clearly show the environmental impact of the company's current practices, the potential cost savings of the new initiative, and the positive impact it could have on the company's image. Data visualization can be a powerful tool for driving change.
I love that. It's about using data to make a difference in the world. But earlier, we talked about how powerful it can be to combine quantitative and qualitative data. How does that play out in real life?
Think about a company trying to understand why customers are abandoning their online shopping carts. They could look at quantitative data like website traffic patterns and conversion rates, but that might not tell the whole story.
Right, because the numbers might show that people are leaving at a certain point in the checkout process, but they don't tell us why.
Exactly. That's where qualitative data comes in. They could conduct user interviews, asking people about their experience on the website, what frustrated them, what could be improved.
So they're gathering those human stories and perspectives that give the numbers meaning.
Precisely. And by combining those insights, they might discover that the checkout process is too complicated, or the shipping costs are too high, or the website isn't mobile friendly.
That's a great example. By blending the what of quantitative data with the why of qualitative data, they get a much richer understanding of the problem and can make more targeted changes to improve the customer experience.
It's about seeing the whole picture, the numbers and the stories behind them.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to think about today. We've explored how to read, interpret, and even create data visualizations. We've learned to be critical consumers of data and to use data to tell compelling stories and drive change. But most importantly, we've emphasized that data isn't just about numbers, it's about people.
Exactly. And that's what makes data visualization so fascinating and so important. It's a bridge between the world of numbers and the world of human experience.
So, dear listener, the next time you encounter a chart or graph, don't just glance at it and move on. Take a moment to engage with it, to question it, to uncover its secrets. And remember, the most compelling visualizations are those that connect us to the human stories that shape our world.
And of course, always remember Nicolas Cage and those swimming pool drownings. Correlation does not equal causation.
Stay curious, keep exploring, and happy data adventures.